Good morning, everybody. Happy week of May 11th. This is Mr. Chavez, and we're going to be talking about the assignments for the week. Um, Last week, you guys looked into the age of exploration and you saw how ideas were spreading from Europe to North America. What we're going to be looking at this week is the scientific revolution. So, what you're going to see is how science began, I'm sorry, just people began thinking about science differently, and they began creating their own ideas for how science should be conducted and how we should learn about the world. What ends up happening is that these ideas influence the way people should be governed. So it stops they people stop thinking about wanting to experiment. Well, they don't stop thinking about it, but they go from wanting to experiment with things in nature, right, to experimenting with ways to govern people. So, ways that people should live and the way a country should be run. They start using these experiments or this way of thinking in society, in social issues, in politics, and things like that. So, what we're going to look at today is the change in scientific thinking that took place. And a lot of it has to do with the creation of the scientific method. So, what I'm going to do is go with you over the assignment with you guys. It's on Sir Francis Bacon. And here we go. I'm going to go ahead and minimize my window. So, it's up in the corner now. This is what the assignment is going to look like in Google Classroom. This is not going to be using GoFormative or any other website. It's just going to be a Google Doc in Google Classroom, and you're going to read through this. I'm going to do that with you first, and then you will answer this question here, or this little section there, and these two questions here. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. All right, Francis Bacon and the scientific method. This assignment is for May 12th. Francis Bacon was an English Renaissance statesman and philosopher, best known for his promotion of the scientific method. He challenged Aristotelian ideas, which are ideas from the Greek philosopher Aristotle, that were based on deductive reasoning. Please review the examples of deductive reasoning and inductive reasoning below. So these are deductive reasoning is the old way that scientific thinking was done. Inductive reasoning is the new way that was pioneered by Sir Francis Bacon, um, and a few other people as well, but we're focusing on Sir Francis Bacon. Um, all right, so deductive reasoning. This is what the philosopher Aristotle um, was into. Okay, so he was a fan of deductive reasoning, and that's what he would use to reach his conclusions. Okay, so it's they say deductive reasoning is from the top down, and inductive reasoning is from the bottom up. Okay, so in deductive reasoning, you sort of use these big arguments. It's like an upside down triangle. So you're using these big arguments, and it comes to a specific point at the bottom, right? In inductive reasoning, you're starting with with information at the bottom, and then you keep on building information until you have your conclusion at the top. Okay, so deductive reasoning is sort of an upside down triangle. Inductive reasoning is a bottom up, um, you know, regular, not upside down triangle, right side up triangle, I guess you would say. All right. So, um, in deductive reasoning, we start with a premise, different pieces of knowledge, and that leads us to a conclusion. So, in the example here, premise one says good students pass exams. Premise two says Jose is a good student. The conclusion, then, based off these premises, these ideas, is that therefore Jose will pass his exam. Okay. Clearly, even good students have bad days, but this is the way deductive reasoning works. Okay, good students pass exams. Jose is a good student, therefore, Jose will pass his exam. Inductive reasoning starts from the bottom up, like I said. So we start with a number of specific observations that leads us to make a probable conclusion. So we're not the conclusion isn't a 100% fact. It's a proven theory. Okay, so in the scientific method, there's not a lot of facts that are stated, but it's a theory. So it's an idea that um, has proven to be true so many times that we assume it's pretty much going to be true 100% of the time. Okay, so the example here is instead of using premises, we start with observations. So observation 1 is Jose passed his quiz. Observation 2 says Jose passed another quiz. Observation 3 says Jose passed his third quiz. The conclusion is Jose will pass his fourth quiz. Okay, so it's working with with different sets of information. Okay, we're just looking little by little. Okay, he passed his quiz. He passed another quiz. He passed another one. He's probably going to pass his next one. Okay, this doesn't mean that he will pass all quizzes, but just based off quizzes 1, 2, 3, we can see he will probably pass number 4. All right, so that's the difference between deductive and inductive reasoning. Okay, so I'm going to go on here to read about Francis Bacon. Francis Bacon was determined to alter the face of natural philosophy. He strove to create a new outline for the sciences with a focus on empirical scientific methods, methods that depended on tangible proof, while developing the basis of applied science. Unlike the doctrines of Aristotle and Plato, Bacon's approach placed an emphasis on experimentation and interaction. Okay, it wasn't based on what you knew. So Aristotle and Plato, they were largely based on, stating what you know, and then using what you know to prove that you are right. Okay, Bacon was about going out and observing the world, experimenting and seeing what happens, and then using the fact that you have seen what happens to educate your next guess. Okay, so it's proof rather than knowledge. Bacon's new scientific method involved gathering data, analyzing it, and performing experiments to observe nature's truths in an organized way. He believed that when approached this way, science could become a tool for the betterment of mankind. Biographer Lauren Isley described Bacon's compelling desire to invent a new scientific method, stating that Bacon, more fully than any man of his time, entertained the idea of the universe as a problem to be solved, examined, meditated upon, rather than as an eternally fixed stage upon which mankind walked. Okay, so Bacon's goal, was to sort of use science for the betterment of mankind. Bacon himself claimed that his empirical scientific method would spark a light in nature that would eventually disclose and bring into sight all that is most hidden and secret in the universe. Today, Bacon is still widely regarded as a major figure in scientific methodology and natural philosophy during the English Renaissance. Having advocated an organized system of obtaining knowledge with a humanitarian goal in mind, he is largely credited with ushering in the new early modern era. All right, so I'll read this section next. I just wanted to make sure you guys get a look at this graphic here. So the scientific method works like this. You ask a question, then you do background research, then you form a hypothesis, and then you test your hypothesis, okay, via experimentation. You analyze the data and draw conclusions, and then you accept, reject, or refine your hypothesis. An easy way to look at this is I can say, which microwave bacon, or I'm sorry, microwave bacon. I'm thinking of food because of this guy's name. Which microwave popcorn pops the most kernels? Okay, so I can do background research. I can go to a website and see, okay, what are the most popular types of popcorn? So we got Jiffy Pop, Orville Redenbacher, and Pop Secret. I don't even know if that's a brand anymore, but it was when I was younger. So I form a hypothesis. I'm going to say Orville Redenbacher popcorn pops the most kernels. We test the hypothesis. I pop up my bags. I see which one leaves us with the most pieces of popcorn popped, and then I draw my conclusion. Okay. Turns out Orville Redenbacher does pop the most kernels, or Jiffy Pop pops the most kernels. Right? We have to do the data. We have to do our research first. All right, so in the boxes below, give one real-life example of deductive reasoning and one real-life example of inductive reasoning. So it's going to look like this on your page, and you're just going to type your premise premise in this box here, and your conclusion here, right? So I'm going to erase that, and I will show you guys an example that I created that you guys can look at to understand this a little better. However, when you're filling this out in Google Classroom, obviously don't use the same examples. All right, so here's the example. Deductive reasoning would work like this. Okay, you can say, people are bored at home. I am always home. Therefore, I am always bored. Okay, so we're starting with things that we know and coming to a conclusion based on that. Okay, inductive reasoning would start with specific observations that lead us to make a probable conclusion. So in inductive reasoning, like I said, you're not going to come up with a factual conclusion. You come up with a theory that, based on the evidence you've gathered, is probably going to be true, but you don't say this is an absolute fact. You just, you say that in conclusion, this is my answer, whatever. So observation 1 would say, I played Xbox for 2 hours yesterday. Okay, I played Xbox. Observation 2 says, I played Xbox for 2 hours today. The conclusion is, in conclusion, I will play Xbox for 2 hours tomorrow. Okay, so we can't prove it, but based on the patterns that we've seen, we can assume that I will probably be playing Xbox for 2 hours tomorrow, right? The difference here is that we're basing it, again, on observations, okay? So I want you guys in this box here to create an example of deductive reasoning, okay? And you can apply it to yourself the way I did here. I just said, I'm always bored in this side, and then on this side I said, I will play Xbox for 2 hours tomorrow, okay? After you've created these examples of inductive and deductive reasoning, you're going to answer the question below. As you answer the two questions, use each of the following terms at least once: scientific method, science, observation, and conclusion. So I'm not saying you have to use 3 of these words or use these words in each response. Okay, if you use them all in the first one, then you don't need to use any in the second one. Okay, or you might want to use scientific method and science for number 1, and then observation and conclusion to answer number 2. Okay, you don't have to use, what I'm saying is that you don't have to use each of these words twice. Okay, just one time, whether it's going to be in number 1 or number 2, that's up to you. So the first question asks you to describe a scenario where someone using deductive reasoning may come to the wrong conclusion about someone or something. Okay, so my example for that is, if I look here, okay, people are bored at home, I'm always home, therefore I'm always bored. That doesn't necessarily prove that I'm always going to be bored, right? And then you could use this experiment to show that even though I would be home, I may not be bored. I may not be always bored, right? I play Xbox for 2 hours a day. Those hours aren't boring. So you can't say I'm always bored, because people are bored at home and I'm always home, right? So I want you to provide an example where someone using deductive reasoning may come to the wrong conclusion about someone or something. For number 2, it says, why would someone consider inductive reasoning to be more useful than deductive reasoning? Okay, so why would it be better to use inductive reasoning rather than inductive reasoning rather than deductive? Okay, so why is it better to base our conclusions on data rather than what we think we already know? Okay, why is it better to go out and actually work with materials or run experiments to prove that something is correct rather than reference your knowledge or someone else's knowledge? Okay, so that's what you're going to be answering in the second question here. Each one is going to be 3 to 4 sentences, and again, make sure that you use each of these terms at least once. It doesn't matter whether you use them in the first or second one. You don't have to use them in each question, just use them once throughout the 2 questions. Okay, that is all. Let me know if you have any questions. I will see you guys later. Goodbye.